How are apps changing the world? More has changed in technology in the last 18 months than in the last 18 years. And leading the way are apps. Do you know that small square on your smartphone? It's not just an app, it's a revolution. I'm excited to be here in KL. I always love coming to new countries and seeing how they interact with apps and seeing what's popular and what's not. I'm passionate about apps. The very first thing I do in the morning is I check my apps. The last thing I do at night is I check my apps. In fact, 79% of smartphone owners check their phones within 15 minutes of waking up. What I'm going to talk about is only two things, that's all. I'm going to talk about apps today and the future, and I'm going to talk about how to maximize your app and make successful apps. Just a show of hands, how many people are in a company where they've got an app, or they've worked on an app, or they've got some sort of an app project in their mind? Just a show of hands. It's a little bit more innovative on this side, I think. And tell me, in regards to apps on your phone, just a quick show of hands, how many people have more than 100 apps on their phone? Yes, there's actually more on this side as well. I should be talking to these guys here. So, what I'm also going to talk about is I'm going to talk about the three industries that are getting disrupted through apps. I'm going to talk about the music industry. I'm going to talk about the gaming industry, and I'm going to talk about the transport industry. Something very, very strange has happened in technology through apps. You've got to remember, the App Store has only been around for about 6 or 7 years, and yet we have seen companies like WhatsApp being bought out for over $19 billion. We've seen Instagram being bought out for $1 billion. What's also quite strange, that's also happening as well, is we're used to being linear. And a linear curve goes on a 45-degree angle. And it usually goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But what's happening is it's going exponentially, which means 2, 4, 8, and keeps doubling. And it was first discovered by a guy called Gordon Moore, and he came up with this phrase, Moore's Law, 1965. He was one of the co-founders of Intel. And what he said was that the processing power will double every single time. And he's actually been correct. And for the next 2 decades, it's still going to be correct. Now, I'm also going to talk about is a thing called punctuated equilibrium. And what that is suddenly there's a shift that happens, or a game changer, and suddenly everything changes. And also as well, the behavior is the one that is the most important. If I want you to get something from today, is you find what the behavior is, and then you create the technology to wrap around the behavior, not around the other way. You don't create an app to say, this is what I want people to start doing. You need to find where the trend is and what people are doing, and wrap the technology around that behavior. And there's a great expression, the trend is your friend. Now, there's a couple of other things that are interesting. There are officially more mobile devices in the world than people. Currently, there's 7.3 billion people in the world. Now, an application, I'm not going to bore you what an app is, but when I talk about apps, it doesn't matter if it's a hybrid app or a web app or an Android app or iPhone app, it's irrelevant. I talk about apps in general. In fact, there was a great phrase which was said just recently by Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. And what he said was that the future of TV are apps. So I talk about it as there's a problem in the marketplace, or a scratch or an itch you need to scratch. So that's where I'm sort of coming from, and that's how I describe it. And even companies that use an app as part of their business, or joining it with a product, and the product is linked through the iPhone app, whether it be clothes, whether it be, things on different devices, such as a Fitbit or a gun, is still using apps in general. And I really do believe apps actually are the future. 91% of top global brands have an app, and it's been increasing at more rates. Uber, which we'll be discussing in the transport industry because there's a lot that's happening with it. It's got an enormous valuation. I think it's now up to $50 billion valuation. They've recently had investors such as Richard Branson, who has invested money into the company, and they've had over $1 billion of investment capital. And this is also quite strange too, because you're always taught when you're young, you never get in the car with strangers. And yet that's what's actually happening right now. Now, when I talk about Facebook and social media, I'm really seeing it from an app point of view. In fact, just a rough judgment, how many people checked the Facebook app this morning? Okay, actually a lot actually, that's quite. Okay, there we go, all right, fantastic. So now I can see that this is also very, very popular. So what is interesting is they've actually done studies, and they've found that when you're bored, you check Facebook. In fact, they've even shown that when you're depressed, you check your email more. And these are internal triggers that get you to go inside the app or your website. Another one that we're going to talk about is Alibaba a little bit, and Airbnb, which is a very interesting one. In fact, when they first pitched the idea, there was a very funny story because they used to have a sign on the door that said there's a very small difference between being an entrepreneur and being unemployed. And no one wanted to have a bar of this business. They said, so are you telling me that you want to start up an app and a business where people stay at random people's house and have a little bed and breakfast? It was bizarre, and they got rejected from so many investors. I also believe, just speaking on investors quickly, I also feel there maybe might be a bit of a shift that maybe clients might actually become a new wave of investors. And maybe a return on investment might be a new way that they can see the results. So let's just take us back to the beginning, very early days. The iPhone launched in 2007. If you really trace it back, it was actually in 2004. And it's called the M68. It was a secretive project by Apple. In fact, it was so secretive, they had, the software guys did not see the hardware. And the hardware guys did not interact with the software. In 2007, they launched the iPhone. And mobile phones is not the big innovation part. Because you've got to remember, mobile phones have been around for 30 years. It's not the internet as well. The internet's been around for 20 years. The internet as we know has been around for 20 years. It's been around a little bit longer, but the internet as we know it has been around for 20 years. Social media started gaining a bit of traction about a decade ago. But where I came from was, I saw in the 1st of July 2008, they launched the App Store. And I got in about very early in 2009. They launched a new iPhone 3GS. And I opened the box, and straight away I played around with a few different things. And I called up a couple of friends and just used it as a normal phone. And there was the App Store, and I started looking on the App Store and just starting to sort of browse around, and you had to put your credit card on. The types of apps were very, very primitive. There were things like a fart button. There were things like a little drinking a beer. There was a silly one with some Carlsberg beer where it looks like you're drinking a beer. There was a couple of other very strange ones that I saw, but none of the big brands were on it. Coca-Cola didn't have an app. McDonald's didn't have an app. In fact, I sort of went through and I thought, no one's really using this thing as seriously as what I saw it as. Everyone thought, yeah, mobile's going to be the future, but I don't really know where or how. I'm not too sure when it's going to happen. WAP was a bit of a flop, and is it Nokia? Nokia was the #1 phone at that time. So then what started to happen was then I looked at it, and it was a win-win-win model. So the developer gets paid, the entrepreneur gets paid, and then Apple takes its 30% cut. So straight away, I was interested. And before Apple launched the first iPhone, they had 14,000 employees. Now they have over 92,000. But that's nothing compared to their closest competitor, Samsung, which has more employees than Microsoft, Google, and Apple combined. The total number of people accessing the web in China is more than double the entire population of the United States. Internet traffic surged through mobile devices 37 million times in the last 6 months of this year. And if you want another number, it's basically 20 Malaysias. Anyway, let's go straight into gaming, right? Anyway, gaming is something that was predominantly a male-driven thing. It was guys in their late 20s and early 30s were big into video games. And what actually happened was there was a very successful game that launched in, I think it was 1991. And I think you probably know it now as soon as I show it to you. And it's been their best consumer game of all time as of 2008. Street Fighter. Now, this here, I mean, the graphics are actually pretty decent. It was a good game, it was competitive, and branched out into many different things. On the Super Nintendo, it was incredibly successful. Now, games around that time were $99. And they were like the razor blades to Gillette, in the sense that they made money from the video games, not from the actual console. Then when I got onto the App Store, you got to remember most apps were paid at that time. And the games that I saw were $9.90. And they're all a bit of a range, but they were quite substantially, some of them were $49. And then very quickly, it went to 99 cents with games like Angry Birds and some of these strategy ones that could appeal to a huge, wide audience, from an 8-year-old kid in China to an 88-year-old woman in Siberia. And then very quickly, it actually turned to free. This is the one that's very popular of last year. This is one of the most popular apps from last year. I'm not too sure if you guys have seen it. It's called Flappy Birds. So this is one that's one of the most popular ones at the moment. And as you can see with the graphics actually aren't that slick, really. People thought graphics were going to get better and better. With more computing power meant better graphics. But it's actually gone a full circle. And it's really about clever ideas, but cute and friendly games that appeal to a wide audience. This was also a sort of a case of there were other reasons why you got into the app, other business models that we've never seen before. Other ones where you buy levels, you purchase special powers. It was a new form of currency. As of 2013, 500 million people have downloaded Candy Crush Saga. And I think it's something like the actual ad revenue per day is $1 million a day from revenue. Now this is another one that's kind of interesting because $37 billion industry is pizza over in the United States. And apps were quite new to the food industry. And what Pizza Hut and Domino's did was very interesting. One, they had a component where they had a GPS in all the motorbikes. So all the cars and motorbikes actually had a little tracker inside. and it was only available to head office. Then what happened was then they allowed the APIs to be available on the actual device, so you can see where your pizza is on the way. Something also interesting that they did was then you had the ability to upsell in other components and make it more profitable. So anytime you call up for a pizza delivery, you kind of went with the usual suspects, you know, Hawaiian or, you know, something very simple. Suddenly now, the customization of building your own pizza, one, is quite enjoyable. Two, it means that they're making more profit because people are getting extra, like oregano for an extra couple of dollars, or they're putting extra cheese on, or chili flakes, which cost like ½ cent, just another sprinkle on it. So they're actually making more profit through it. Now this is actually an interesting one. So a London taxi driver needs to memorize 25,000 streets. An Uber driver just needs a phone. In fact, there's 3 times as many private cars than black taxis over in the UK. And now they're even talking about driverless cars, which is going to make it even more interesting. So all that technology with Google Maps will start to be applied. In fact, they even talk about it being safer. Trust is shifting from corporations to individuals. And what I mean by that was it used to be from the top down. And the big companies had the most amount of power, and then it sort of started splitting down the middle. But what's starting to happen now, it's starting to move to the sides. And it's starting to become more influential based on the customer's experience, as opposed to what we see in the advertisements nowadays. They said that TripAdvisor, if you were planning a trip to New York City and you had a conference on, and you read that the beds were very, very uncomfortable from reviews, it might actually change your decision not to stay at that particular hotel. What's also starting to happen too is that your online reputation is becoming more and more important. Now, with that, we leave behind our online reputation. Now, I understand that websites like eBay have got, you know, parts where you can log in and you've got reviews and comments, etc. I'm aware of that. But that's just anything. I mean, you can call, you know, Twinkle Toes 29, you know, has a lot of reviews. But it wasn't you personally. It wasn't actually connected to you directly. Because everyone knows, and everyone like online, is a cat. So this is what's happened. In the last 38 years, radio came into the picture. And they thought that that was going to disrupt the music industry. But it didn't. It was the first freemium model, which meant you heard it on the radio first, you liked the song, and then you went to the shops and you bought the album. Then what happened with television? They thought that was going to disrupt and kill the radio star. And it didn't. What it meant was that people could start making video clips that were more exciting. And a really good example is Michael Jackson used to make incredible video clips. Then the internet came along, and to reach 50 million users was 4 years. The iPod, to a certain extent, was a bit of a disruption model, and then basically the big one that really came into the music industry and disrupted everything was Pandora. Pandora, Spotify. This is a very, very primitive version of machine learning. And what machine learning is the next frontier for apps. So you create an algorithm to play a game like, let's say, chess. And that's fine, you can figure out the algorithm on how to play chess. But now it's how do you play chess, and it figures out what moves you do. This is where the next frontier is. This was a very primitive version on it, and very intuitive. If you like a song, you give a thumbs up. If you don't, you give a thumbs down. As simple as that. Then what's starting to happen is it's starting to increase your, let's say you like Michael Jackson. You might like it because it's pop music. You might like that particular song. You might like Billie Jean, but you don't like a lot of the other songs. Or it could be Michael Jackson. In the next 30 songs, it's going to see, are you going to like another one of Michael Jackson? another pop one, and then if you do like Michael Jackson again, it gives 2 points to it. So it's based on tags. This is what's happening to the artists, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for artists to actually make an earning. Madonna's coming recently out to Sydney, and her tickets are a minimum of $300. A lot of artists now are looking at for the main source of income. Also, what's starting to happen too is that other players in the marketplace, like Jay-Z and other producers, are grouping together, and they've launched an app called Tidal to compete against it. Now, I'm an app strategist, so I believe that every ad agency, development company needs an app strategist that sees it from a different perspective and come in from a different angle. And there's all this excitement about apps, but then there's a lot of apps that sit on your phone and don't really get used. So 1 in 4 are abandoned after the first use. So what I want to talk about later on is how to actually get your app to be very, very successful. I've launched over 38 apps for the federal government in Australia, to companies like Uniden and Rip Curl. And I've written a book where I interviewed people from all over the world, from ad agencies like Saatchi & Saatchi in New York City, Crispin Porter in Augusta, to a lot of app developers or appreneurs. And then I've spoken to a lot of other people who are in the tech space and see why a certain app's successful. In fact, one guy I interviewed was a very interesting guy. He was from Germany, and he made a game called Tiny Wings from his bedroom. And it was a paid app, I think a couple of dollars. It was on tier 2 or 3. And he actually sold over 6.5 million copies of the game. There's no money on advertising, there was no spend on anything. He just created something that people wanted. It was very addictive, and it was actually a lot of fun. Now, does anyone know what a zombie app is? A zombie app is basically 80% of the apps are zombie apps. They just sit there on your phone. I've probably got about 2,000 apps, and I've got to say there's probably about 10, maybe 20 that I use a lot. And I'd say there's a lot of other ones. I don't know when I downloaded it or why I downloaded it, but I feel afraid to delete it because one day I might need it. There might be that one opportunity. I think, gee, damn it, that's the one I deleted. So there's these sort of zombie apps that sit there. So how do you avoid your app from being a zombie app? And the trick is you've got to dive deep, not wide. So this is a good expression that I really love. And I think one of the biggest problems that happen, a lot of people say that, launching an app is very easy, and 2, it's very expensive. And what tends to happen is they get caught up in launching it for as many different devices as possible. What about Android? What about Windows? What about the Apple Watch? And I think what you've got to actually look back is you've got to remember that Instagram was bought for over $1 billion, but yet it only had an iPhone app. It didn't even have an Android app. In fact, even the website was just a promotion, a very single page to get people to go to the App Store. So focus on the experience from the very, very beginning. And once you really engage what it is the consumer wants and enjoys, then go deeper and deeper into that experience. And you want more engagement. I would prefer to have 5 people using my app that absolutely love it and play it 14 hours a day than to have, 14 million people using it and it's just sitting on their phone and they use it once or twice. Because you can always keep expanding it. You can always keep pushing it out wide. This is a little one that I saw, which was, so basically people feel kind of good in the sense that they take away their laptop and then half an hour later they're actually sitting on their phone in bed, which is probably like me actually. I'm very, very much like that. So I kind of feel good that I'm actually leaving the office and then 20 minutes later I'm back in. Mobile is all about experience. And a lot of buzzwords, you're going to start hearing more and more of these words like agile methodology and user experience and UI. We're going to see more and more of these things. But these are the 4 things that you need to remember to create engagement. And it's called the hook. And what it is, you've got the trigger. And you've got an external and an internal trigger. An external trigger is a link on your website, or clicking on the app icon. That's an external trigger. Or seeing an ad or something like that. That's an external trigger. An internal trigger is exactly what I was saying before about when you're bored, you go on Facebook. Or you get a notification on Facebook, but then it pulls you in and you don't know what's behind the app. It could be a friend request. It could be an invitation to Candy Crush. It could be an amazing opportunity. You don't know until you actually get inside. So there's that curiosity factor. Never ever do an app, and I see it time and time again. They get people to come into the app and they say something like it's 20% off or something ridiculous. I think it's a waste opportunity, and a lot of times one of the reasons why a lot of people delete apps is because they have push notifications and they abuse the right to start selling. Then you've got the action. That's signing in or logging in to the app or website. Then you offer a reward. Let's say something like, I don't know, you earn 20 points, or you've just unlocked 20 credits, or something like that. You've just earned a certain amount of, or I don't know, you've earned a gold bar. Then what happens, it takes to the investment. The investment is, because you've got that, you've got an extra level. Basically what happens is they go, okay, because you've unlocked the next level, suddenly you've got a better experience at the end. Now, the App Store is like a meritocracy. So a meritocracy is an economy, or it's a sort of a democracy that's based on merit. So the smartest person goes to the top, or the best product goes to the top. It's the closest thing we've got. You can't really buy your way in to the App Store. If you have a great product, a really great product, Apple will start to take notice and start to feature it more into many different sections. If you want your product to be better, is it that good that it's going to change your behaviour? In a lot of cases it's not. But one of the ones was Snapchat. And they actually broke a rule and skipped a whole step. And what they did was, instead of going into the app, and you've got to click on the button to show the camera, it just went straight in to exactly what you want. I say if you've got a weather app, get into them straight away. People probably want to find out the weather, whereabouts they are, straight away. Number two, they probably don't want advertisements at the very beginning. They probably don't. And they probably want to find out, basically every country except for the United States uses Celsius. So you would segregate it. So for the American market, you'd actually do it in Fahrenheit. So this is something that is very, very important. And there's another expression I really love, it's called jumping the curve. 80% of car trips are solo trips. Now, this is a bit of a problem that people have seen in the marketplace. And they've seen that 23 hours of the day, your car isn't being used. So the solution was this company, Lyft. Has anyone heard of Lyft at all? Lyft is like a ride-sharing app over in San Fran. Very, very popular. They've sort of raised $6 million. And you can tell the cars because they've got this funny moustache on the front. Now, they've actually put it was a little gimmicky idea, but it actually turned into quite an iconic thing. You could see when your Lyft is here. And it was a bit of sort of had a bit of a fun vibe to it. So, you know, it was very, very popular when I was in California. But now it's actually sort of changed to a sort of a glowing sort of pink moustache, but they've kept with that. Americans spend approximately 37 billion hours waiting in line. Now, something that I used to talk about, the 3 ways to make successful apps. Does it save you money? Does it save you time? Or is it entertaining? If you're going to go in the entertaining category, it's going to get very, very competitive. So find something that actually is saving time. So an example would be if you purchased movie tickets and you just rocked up and went straight into the movie, well, you're saving time. And you can justify even bad design, you know, purely for that factor. And in fact, you can even justify paying a couple of dollars for an app. Also what it does as well, it might be something like picking up a cup of coffee. And there's one called Beat the Queue, where you just basically order from your phone and you just go to a coffee shop and you just go straight in and just pick up your one. So something like that that's actually about saving people time. The best example of saving time is this company, Uber. And what Uber's doing is basically saving time. They're selling time. And what I mean by that is that when you're having a meal, let's say at a restaurant, and you're having dessert, you press a button, and within 4 minutes, a car comes to you. Also, what's happening as well is the car's coming to you, and they're thinking, well, if a car can come to you within 4 minutes, what else can they bring? Can they also deliver a pizza? Can they also deliver food? Can they deliver blood to patients? Can they deliver parcels? So the valuation is so high because they're selling themselves in the big term as being the biggest logistics company in the world. The sharing economy is really all about renting or borrowing. Everything else will become on demand. Does anyone know what a valuable map is? No one? That's fantastic, awesome, great. Valuable map is the one that I like the best, right? A valuable map is something that it starts off like a skeleton and gets better the more you use it. So a good example of that is Evernote. Now, Evernote's a very interesting one. It's great for the elephant, and elephants are notorious for having very good memories. And its natural environment is grass, so that's why it's green. But with Evernote, they're just trying to get you in to just write your first post or to write one note, because it's absolutely useless at the beginning. But when you start using it more and more and more, it becomes more valuable the more you use it. Uniden. So this is one of the clients we work back in Sydney. So Uniden is a big Japanese company. This was an app icon we did for them. And what I like to do is make it very symbolic. Don't put any text. Try to put colours. They said that 51% of apps are either blue or black. So if you want to stand out, try green, try orange. And try to incorporate 2 different items of what it does. So this one, it works in your car, and it also works as a camera and a video recorder. So we tried to put the lens, in the wheel. The user experience when you put it on the side is very simple to use and very big buttons. There's nothing worse than an app that's really hard to press the buttons, oversized. Also as well, only have a choice of 3. They've done studies that if you have more than 5 to 7 options, people can't make any choice whatsoever. So just keep it simple. This is also how the user experience sort of works. What I decided to do for this one was I thought, what I'll do is I'll strip everything back. Everything that needs to be in the settings will be tucked away. We just want to get the basic stuff straight away. So what it does is you install it on your phone, and you stick it up on your car. And when you are driving, it keeps recording and then deleting. So it keeps buffering. So it's constantly, recording live, but keeps deleting. So it's not taking up storage. But let's say something happens and the car swerves off the road, or you hit a fox or something. Then what happens is it keeps the last 2 minutes leading up to the crash. So it was a problem in the marketplace that used to happen. So we provided a solution for that problem. And the actual, anyone who's sort of built an app or has worked with an app will know that there's the accelerometer that's been built into the phone. But in terms of the G sensor, hasn't. So we had to get a company in the US purely just to trigger off the device for that. So that was that. This is a little project I've been working on, and this is where I believe is the future of apps. So this is basically called a incentives cube. And it's sort of a cube about this big, and you put all the things you like let's say you love chocolate or coffee pods or whatever it is. And then basically you put it in the safe, and then on your phone, you can basically, when you have earned, a certain amount of calories or done a certain amount of steps, then the actual safe unlocks, and then basically you can receive your chocolate. So it's giving incentives for something else. So another example, you could use it for a remote control, you could use it for sticking in an iPad or a phone or something like that around, special events. A lot of times kids kind of start playing with their phones, etc., remote controls. So there was a sort of incentives cube. So as you can see it working. The whole purpose of this sort of one was to show that the device is where you put all your functionalities, all the intelligent part. You can always update an app, very quick and easy, you can change it to different languages. Products, they're clunky, and so you want to keep them simple as possible. So I believe the future of a lot of apps are going to be using it to connect with products. It connects to your fridge, it connects to other parts, it connects to your television, it connects to, I think pretty soon we're going to see some innovation around clothes and warming it when the temperature changes. I think something also I'd like to see, and I think would be very, very interesting to see, is I think we might see the first digital election. I think we're also going to see some huge leaps in the education industry. What Google did was they democratized search results. So the top professor at Harvard University had access to the same results as any other village anywhere in the world. I believe the education industry will be done the same way, and I believe it's going to be an amazing experience. I think in the next decade, I think we're going to see some enormous challenges. This was actually a bit of fun when I was in Palo Alto. This was a zero gravity flight, so you experience what it's like to be in space. And it was quite a fun experience, and there was a lot of really great memories. So this was the book I launched, How Apps Are Changing the World. And this is the promo I did for a documentary. I'm doing a documentary at the moment, and if anyone's interested, I'm more than happy to talk with anyone. But what I want to do is talk to a lot of the ad agencies, I want to talk to a lot of people and really find out what's sort of happening within the app space from many different levels. So thank you very much, and I'll leave you with this.
So how are apps changing the world? More has changed in the last 18 months than the last 18 years. And leading the way are apps. You know the small square on your smartphone? It's not just an app, it's a revolution. It's estimated the global app market will exceed $38 billion by 2015. Recent global figures show there's nearly 30 million mobile internet connections in Australia and nearly 100 million apps being downloaded each month. Just recently, Apple reported the 50 billionth download from its App Store, which has over 1.2 million apps. And they're not just for phones and tablets. They're now being designed for our televisions, cars, and even clothes. In this series, we set out to find how apps are changing the way we communicate, we educate, and create, and how it's become an essential part of our lives.